August 5th, 1962. It was a day that changed Hollywood history forever. Imagine the scene. The sun is rising over Brentwood, California, but the world's brightest light has just gone out. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate blonde bombshell, was found dead in her home at only 36 years old. It was a tragedy that stopped the heart of the entire planet. But while the public was mourning the loss of a legend, a much more complicated and cold-blooded story was starting to unfold behind closed doors. We often think of Marilyn as this fragile, ethereal figure, but she was also a massive commercial force. Did you know she actually died with a fortune that would be worth tens of millions in today's market? Yet, here's the kicker that will absolutely blow your mind. Almost none of that wealth, none of her personal treasures, and none of her legacy went to her own family. It's one of the most bizarre and frustrating chapters in celebrity history. And today, we are peeling back the curtain on the battle for Marilyn's ghost. The moments following her passing were pure, unadulterated chaos. While the police were processing the scene at her home, the question of her belongings was already being whispered about in the shadows. Who held the keys to her safe? Who had the rights to her unpublished photos? You would think her family or her closest loved ones would be the first in line, right? But the reality was far more shocking. Marilyn's will was a document that would send shockwaves through the industry for decades. The people who ended up with the keys to her kingdom weren't those she grew up with, or even the men she had famously loved. Instead, the control of her entire life's work was handed over to people she barely considered family in the traditional sense. It was the beginning of a legal chess match that would turn a Hollywood star into a global corporate product. Now, let's talk numbers because they are staggering. At the time of her death, Marilyn's estate was valued at roughly $1.6 million. To a modern ear, that might sound like a decent amount, but maybe not world record level. But hold on. Because we have to look at the bigger picture. In 1962, that was a mountain of money. If you adjust for inflation, we're talking about a fortune that would easily clear $15 million today. But even that is just the tip of the iceberg. The real value wasn't just in the cash sitting in bank accounts. It was in the intellectual property, the value of her image, her movies, and her name was essentially infinite. Yet despite being one of the most hardworking women in the business, the way that money was distributed was anything but simple. The names that appeared in her will as the primary beneficiaries left everyone's jaws on the floor. First up was Lee Strasberg, her famous acting coach and the guru of method acting. To Marilyn, Lee was a mentor and a father figure she never really had. Then there was Marianne Criss, her psychiatrist. Think about that for a moment. Her acting teacher and her therapist were the ones who were given the lion's share of her legacy. Lee Strasberg in particular was granted all of her personal effects and 75% of her residuary estate. This meant he didn't just get a check. He got her clothes, her furniture, her private letters, and the rights to her very image. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love seeing where our community is tuned in. Can you imagine working your entire life to become a legend, only for your acting teacher to decide what happens to your private letters and even your underwear? It sounds like a movie plot, doesn't it? But for Marilyn, this was reality. This wasn't just about bank accounts. It was about her personal secrets and her most intimate belongings being owned by someone she worked with. It's a level of control that feels almost intrusive when you look at it from her perspective. But wait, because this is where the story gets truly messy. Lee Strasberg wasn't actually the one who ended up making the biggest bucks from this arrangement. No, the real power move came from a woman Marilyn had never even met in her life. Are you ready for the ultimate Hollywood betrayal? Because a complete stranger was about to become the billionaire gatekeeper of Marilyn's soul, and the fallout was going to be legendary. Now, to truly understand how we reached this point of no return, we have to look much closer at Lee Strasberg himself. He wasn't just some guy off the street or a random Hollywood employee. He was the legendary leader of the Actors Studio in New York. He was the king of method acting, the man who taught legends like Paul Newman and Al Pacino how to dig into their deepest, darkest traumas to deliver a raw, visceral performance. To the world, he was a genius, but to Marilyn, he was something much more significant. She sought his approval like a lost daughter seeking a father's love. She trusted him with her mind and her craft, and in her will, she left him her personal effects, likely hoping he would look after her legacy with the same care and respect he gave her artistry. But did he actually do that? While some say he was her greatest mentor, others have often wondered if there was a darker, more opportunistic side to their professional bond. For years after her passing, he kept her belongings locked away in climate-controlled storage, almost like a dragon guarding a massive hoard of treasure that didn't belong to him. But the real shocker, the twist that no one saw coming, happened in 1982 1992 when Lee passed away. You see, Lee's entire estate, which included every single thing Marilyn had ever owned, passed directly to his third wife, Anna Strasberg. Now, take a second to let this sink in. Anna and Marilyn never even met. Can you actually wrap your head around that level of irony? A woman who never shared a single conversation with Marilyn, never saw her cry during a rehearsal, and never knew the real person behind the makeup was suddenly the sole gatekeeper of Marilyn's most intimate secrets and her entire physical history. Anna Strasberg didn't just sit on these items out of respect. She quickly realized she was sitting on a literal gold mine. She decided to turn Marilyn Monroe from a deceased actress into a global multi-million-dollar brand. Suddenly, Marilyn's iconic face was being licensed for everything you can imagine. We are talking about wine bottles, t-shirts, handbags, and even luxury jewelry. Was this a genuine way to keep her memory alive for new generations? Or was it a cold-blooded cash grab that would have made Marilyn's skin crawl? The commercialization was absolutely relentless. Anna even hired a specialized licensing firm to hunt down anyone using Marilyn's image without paying a hefty fee. It was effectively the birth of the dead celebrity industry as we know it today, where a person's soul becomes a corporate asset. The peak of this commercial frenzy finally arrived in 1999 at the famous Christie's auction in New York. This event was basically the Super Bowl of celebrity memorabilia, and it was a media circus like no other. Everything was up for grabs, and I mean everything. We're talking about her used lipsticks, her furniture, her personal letters, and even her old household appliances. Can you believe someone actually paid thousands of dollars for her old kitchen mixer? It was surreal, and frankly a little bit uncomfortable to watch. The crown jewel of the night, of course, was the shimmering, skin-tight Jean Louis dress she wore to sing Happy Birthday to President John F. Kennedy. When the gavel finally fell, that dress sold for a record-breaking $1.26 million. It was a staggering amount of money, but many fans felt it was ghoulish to see her private life stripped bare and sold to the highest bidder in a public room. And let's not ignore the juicy rumors that have been swirling in the shadows for decades. There are persistent whispers that not everything actually made it to that auction block. Some historians and close friends claim there were private diaries and boxes of expensive jewelry that simply vanished into thin air. Where did they go? Did the executors hide them away for themselves? Or were they sold off privately to mysterious, wealthy collectors who want to keep Marilyn's secrets for their eyes only? The lack of transparency only fueled the fire of conspiracy. Meanwhile, the estate was locked in a massive, years-long legal war over the right of publicity, and they fought tooth and nail in the courts to ensure that the estate owned Marilyn's face forever, arguing that her image was a piece of real estate that could be owned indefinitely. It was a high-stakes battle between the idea of a person as a human being and a person as a corporate product. While the lawyers were getting rich and Anna was building a global empire, Marilyn's true fans were left wondering if the real Norma Jean was getting lost in the shuffle of all these dollar signs. But just when people thought the estate couldn't get any more corporate, Anna Strasberg decided to make one final earth-shattering move that would change everything. She was about to sell the keys to the kingdom to a massive corporation for an amount that would make your head spin. But what does that mean for the future of Marilyn's ghost? Hold on tight, because the final chapter is where the money reaches truly astronomical heights and the controversy gets even more personal. After decades of playing the ultimate gatekeeper, Anna Strasberg decided it was finally time to pull the trigger on a deal that would change Hollywood history forever. In 2011, she cashed out in the biggest way possible, selling the remaining 75% of Marilyn Monroe's estate to a massive corporation called Authentic Brands Group. The rumored price tag for this massive transaction: a mind-blowing $20 to $30 million. Just think about that for a second. The rights to a human being's face, voice, and very name were traded like stocks on a board. It was the final step in turning a tragic icon into a corporate asset. As you can imagine, the public outcry was absolutely massive. Even though the internet wasn't quite what it is today, the backlash was legendary. Fans across the globe felt a deep sense of betrayal. They felt like Marilyn was being pimped out by corporate suits who didn't care about her struggle, her talent, or the method she worked so hard to master. To these big companies, she wasn't a woman who suffered from loneliness and heartbreak. She was a logo that could be slapped onto anything from cheap perfume to high-end handbags. It was the ultimate commodification of a soul. Can you imagine the frustration of seeing her legacy turned into a grocery store product? But if you think that was the peak of the madness, just look at what happened recently. Fast forward to the 2022 Met Gala, where the world stood still as Kim Kardashian stepped onto the red carpet wearing the actual Happy Birthday Mr. President dress. This is the absolute example of how Marilyn's fortune and legacy are still being exploited for maximum shock value. Can you believe they let a modern celebrity squeeze into a 60-year-old piece of delicate history? The controversy was immediate when photos emerged later showing the dress had been stretched, with several of those iconic hand-sewn crystals missing or hanging by a thread. The internet went into a full-blown meltdown. Fans were devastated. It felt like a physical violation of the last tangible thing we had left of her. Why was a piece of museum-grade history being used as a prop for a 3-minute photo op? It just goes to show that when a corporation owns your ghost, nothing is sacred anymore. It really makes you stop and wonder about the what-ifs. What if Marilyn had been able to have a child? What if her estate had been left in the hands of someone like Joe DiMaggio? You remember Joe, the man who was so devastated by her loss that he famously sent a half-dozen red roses to her crypt 3 times a week for 20 years. He never spoke ill of her to the press, and he never tried to sell her old shoes for a quick buck. If the legacy had stayed with those who actually loved the woman behind the blonde hair, would her memory be treated with more dignity? It's heartbreaking to speculate on how different things would be if her fortune wasn't a weapon used by lawyers, but a shield used by family. Instead, we live in a world where Marilyn Monroe is consistently ranked as one of the highest earning dead celebrities on the planet. Year after year, her estate rakes in over $10 million in licensing fees. But let's be real here. Who is that money actually going to? It's not going to the orphanages she cared about or the fellow actors she wanted to support. It's lining the pockets of corporate executives and shareholders who see her as a brand identity rather than a person. So we have to ask the hard question. After 60 years of lawsuits, auctions, and corporate takeovers, was Marilyn Monroe ever truly allowed to rest in peace? Or is she still being worked by the Hollywood machine today, just as much as she was in 1955? It feels like the ultimate tragedy that even in death, she can't find the privacy she so desperately craved in life. Do you think it's fair for a total stranger or a massive corporation to own a celebrity's entire existence forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because we really want to hear what you think about this Hollywood ghost story. Is it a business success or a moral failure? You decide.